Good morning. Happy Tuesday. Getting myself live on Instagram. Let's see. I think I'm live. All right, cool. Good to go. Let me just turn off the sound here. All right, perfect. All right, we are good to go. Welcome back to Fit Body Secrets, where my mission is to bring you guys inspiration, motivation, and some tips to help you guys on your fitness and your fat loss and your muscle building or whatever journey you are on to improve yourself through nutrition, fitness, lifestyle changes. I am here to guide you. And today, before I get into today's topic, I am going to talk a little bit about just some thoughts that were coming to my head this morning as I was working out. I was going through some rowing intervals and I was just reflecting on how hard I was on myself yesterday in my training. And if you're a CrossFitter, I know you can relate to having those days where things just don't feel right, like you just feel off. And it's so easy to just get so down on ourselves. And I was reminded that the majority of the people, when they go to the gym, right, they're like not putting expectations like that on themselves. It's like, I'm going to the gym to lift weights and make sure that I hit an RPE of like 8 to 9, hitting some cardio and leaving. And it was just such a reminder to me of why CrossFit is so effective, because it does train a different level of grit, of fortitude, of skill that you don't have in any other training program. So I had to remind myself of that yesterday when I was being so hard on myself, that this is why we do this, because this stuff makes me better. And it's also when it's like, okay, maybe this is the time that I should have been pulling back a little bit. Maybe this isn't the day to be pushing myself as hard. So as somebody who has been doing CrossFit for 15 years, I am still in that same mindset on days because it still feels hard. It never gets easier because you just raise your standards. It's not like any other training program. So if you've ever had those days, because let me just tell you, yesterday I was like, I just don't even want to do CrossFit anymore. This is just, ugh. But I was also like, I really want to be good at this movement. Why is this feeling hard? So if you've ever felt that way, just know you're actually feeling something that is expected, because you are testing yourself outside of just a muscular standpoint. And that is what makes CrossFit so effective, because that's why we love it, right? You leave the gym feeling, well, some days you leave it feeling pretty crappy, but it motivates you to want to get better at that. And some days you leave the gym feeling like, wow, I accomplished something that I didn't think I could. So before I get into today's episode, if you resonate with that, just wanted to share that because I was definitely feeling the feels yesterday, and it impacted my entire afternoon after my workout. I tried not to let it, but it did. Today, I do have two big things that I want to talk about. My last episode, I talked a lot about nutrition, macros, all of the different things, why it might not be working for you. Today, I really want to talk to you guys about tracking without obsession, because this tends to be one of the biggest pitfalls I see, why people burn out from nutrition. And let me just start by saying your nutrition is more than just your macros, which was a lot of what I talked about in my last episode. And really tracking numbers should really never be a focus point. It should literally be a fine-tuning thing. It should never be something that consumes your brain, but it tends to consume your brain because of years and years and years of what you've been told and never actually building the foundation. So today, what I want to do is cover some things to help you guys obsess less about it. And I do definitely think that if you have not watched my last episode, you should go back and watch that one, because I will probably touch on some of the things that I went into more depth on in that last episode. Today is really going to be for those of you guys that want to get results, okay? And let's just be honest. What you track, you can change. I talked about that in the last episode too. If you know how many calories you're consuming, what you're consuming, you also know how much you're moving, how much you're training, you can gauge inputs and expenditure, and you can make adjustments to things. You can also test things when you're feeling like maybe you're not eating enough. Maybe you're getting some cravings. Maybe that's a sign you need to be eating more food. It gives you data that you can adjust off of. That's all it is. it should never be this math project or this constant like mind game, but somehow along the way, people have made it into this big mind game, which is not really what it's supposed to be. In fact, I remember when one of my coaches tried to get me like really focused on macros, and it just was not intuitive to me. It felt unnatural. And I'll be honest, it did temporarily ruin my relationship with food, because there was a time where I was like restricting protein because I was getting so much protein from like other food sources, oats and grains or whatnot, that the amount of protein I would have left over at dinner time was like nothing. And I'm like, yo, I'm eating like a vegan meal now because there's like no protein left in my diet. And I'm like, this just cannot be healthy. So I had to take a step back and realize that that was not the right approach for me. And it's what I teach. I do not teach people to be, working on spot on macros. It doesn't work. It creates too much stress. And for a lot of you guys, you need different things besides just the macronutrients. A lot of you guys are in a time of life where you're busy, right? Like you're CrossFitting first thing in the morning or after work. Your day is full. You don't have time to be sitting there trying to figure out, how many grams of protein this meal. It's too much. We need to simplify things. And that's why the last episode will be very beneficial. Today, I really want to focus on making the tracking aspect of things very easy and simple for you, whether you use an app or you don't use an app. And then also want to talk to you guys about my Jumpstart that's coming up. That is going to be starting on February 9th. Would love for all of you guys, if this episode resonates with you, my last episode, you are looking to lose body fat, or maybe you're looking to improve your performance in the gym, or you are thinking that maybe there's just something not right with your nutrition. Maybe your metabolism, your hormones are off. You don't know where to start. Like, this is for you. Whether you've been tracking for a while, you're not getting results, whether you have never tracked before and you're ready to try using it, but you want to see how I do things in my program and how we create results and hopefully help you build. I call it the Jumpstart because it truly is the first 21 days of taking you through a plan that's going to get you completely different, completely transformed over the next 12 to 24 weeks. So if you want in on that, I'm going to talk about that at the end of this episode, but let's get into some of the macro tracking stuff that you need to hear about. First and foremost, I hate even using the term macro tracking because I don't think anybody should ever be tracking macros, all right? We should be tracking our food. First and foremost, we're just tracking our food. And before tracking your food, we need to look at the foundational habits that matter most. So most of you guys listening to this, if you're into macro tracking, you're beyond that. However, some people jump right into macros without ever addressing the foundation. If you don't already have a good concept of meal balance and structure and routine meals throughout the day, whether that's breakfast, lunch, dinner, and a couple of snacks, or breakfast, lunch, and dinner, whatever it is, those are the places to start. All right. We don't need to add more overwhelm to you by doing that. Now, as I mentioned, we should not be thinking about tracking macros. We should be tracking your food. And in the beginning, maybe that's all you're doing. You have a system, and in your head, you're like, I eat 3 meals a day. I eat, a palm portion of protein, a cup of carbs, about a thumb size of fat. If you're using the portion control method, you have a plate and you're building it out by thirds. You've got a third protein, a third veggies, a third starch, and then you're sprinkling some fat on. Whatever your strategy is, you've got some kind of a system built in place, okay? With any type of plan, there's always pitfalls. So if I'm doing that, obviously, what do I do when I want to have pizza, or I decide that I randomly want to have some chocolate? It doesn't fit the plan as easily, right? That's where people in that aspect of things can sometimes get stuck. But the same thing can happen with macro tracking, right? Vice versa. Somebody can go to macro tracking and they're like, oh, I can just fit all these foods in. But now they're literally playing number Tetris because they fit in all of these, chocolates and mixed ingredient foods that are making it hard for them to get enough protein. So we really need to be looking at that foundation should be there, the basics of the meal structure, meal timing, and we're tracking that stuff. That allows us to build some flexibility into your diet by tracking things, right? Okay. So going into part 1 of this is really looking at the different ways to track. And the first way to track is simplifying, right? You have to hold yourself accountable though to, okay, I'm sticking to 3 meals and 2 snacks. I know about what's on that plate so that if I'm like, man, I'm still feeling kind of hungry, you can start addressing and adjusting things. You can add a little bit more protein. You can add a little bit more carbs. You can add a little bit more fats and playing around with that. This way is great for beginners. It's great for somebody that's transitioning from a very processed diet, or maybe they've just been eating, very chaotically. It can help build basics, right? It's also good for people that can stick to a lot of the same things. They don't have a lot of variance in their diet. When you have a lot of variance in your diet, maybe foods are different, you like to have that stuff, tracking can be a lot more helpful. Tracking also removes all of the guesswork. All right. So the other problem with like the portion control method is we all have different eyes, right? So when I portion out a tablespoon of peanut butter, it's more like 2 tablespoons of peanut butter, right? So if I'm a underlogger, I'm an under tracker in my head, I might be getting more calories than I'm consuming, right? So we need to make sure that tracking, I'm sorry, we shouldn't say I need to make sure. When we track, it does make us more accountable to actually accurately accounting for those things. But a lot of people get very obsessed over the details that don't matter. The first detail that matters, I've already kind of talked about that, is if you're tracking your food, well, first and foremost, having an easy app to track in. If you're using the eyeball portion method, there are a couple of apps that are pretty helpful for that. The First Form app has a pretty simple hand portion method. I think is great for beginners. If you want to do it a more flexible way, I personally think that Macros First is the best food tracking app. I have not tried 2 others that I've heard really good things about, so I don't want to just use that one. I have not tried the Carbon Diet app, and I have not tried, I believe it is Macro Factor, which is Jeff Nippard's macro tracking app, which I've heard great things about both of those. So if either of those are one that you use, that's good. MyFitnessPal, probably the most well-known one, has a big database, but has a lot of inaccuracies in what's actually in there. Because first and foremost, when we're tracking our food, the thing that gives most of you guys anxiety is, how do I know how to choose the right entries, right? So the first thing is making sure that you have an app that makes that easy for you. I personally think Macros First is the easiest way to do it, okay? It's got the most consistent entries in there for you. There's not a bunch of user entered input, so you're not getting a bunch of random stuff, okay? So using an app that's simple. Now let's talk about the part that matters most, accurately accounting for things, all right? This goes whether you're tracking or you're not, because you can say, I ate 3 meals and 2 snacks and it was about this much, but if you aren't taking consideration the coffee creamer in your coffee, the random handful of pretzels you had, the bite of your kid's mac and cheese, all the little things that you added up, that's still not tracking accurately, even if you're not tracking. But the same thing can happen when you're tracking. In fact, in my last episode, I talked about the fact that the average American consumes over 3,500 calories a day while walking less than 2,000 steps a day. Okay, so that's a pretty big statistic. So accuracy and tracking matters most. You have to be accountable to that. And one of the first things that you're going to want to do is make sure that you are weighing your food out. Now, this does not need to be a time-consuming task. It actually should save you time. It should take you more time to have to sit there and think about, is that about 3 to 4 ounces of protein? Because that is a guessing game that you're also having to play the mental battle of, am I being honest with myself or not? Versus, I put this on the scale and it says 112 grams or 4.2 ounces. You know exactly how much it is. That's how simple it should be. But here are some things that you do that are probably making it harder for you. You're trying to weigh things and you got your phone open and your kids are screaming at you and you're trying to do everything at once, right? Like, I get that. That can be overwhelming and stressful. You're trying to make dinner for your whole family and you don't know how you should be weighing things out, okay? I get that. So let me give you some strategies first and foremost, right? First thing I always do is in my kitchen, near my scale, having some kind of a notepad nearby, all right? Something to just, if you're cooking food or whatever, you don't have to worry about having your phone right there. Just jot down how much. I put 2.1 ounces of pasta in the pot, right? So you know exactly how much raw pasta you had. I just used 32 grams of dressing. I cut out, or whatever you're doing, you have something nearby to jot it down, because you can then, when you sit down to eat, open your phone and just track it while you're eating. All right. So don't try and do two things at once. It's going to make your life harder. Now, there might be times where you can do that. So like often when I'm cooking my breakfast, that's a good time for me to multitask while I have my lid on and I'm letting my vegetables heat up for my eggs. I'll typically open my app, and I eat a lot of the same things. So I'll copy from yesterday, which is going to be another strategy I'm going to give you guys. And I'll just adjust the amounts and maybe kind of figure out my next meal from there. But don't try and do everything at once. Make it as easy as possible for you just to notate how much it weighed. All right. Using the negative weight measure is another thing that I often recommend. In fact, I like this because it also teaches more autonomy, because weighing your food is not something that you're going to be doing forever unless you choose to. Like, I weigh my food most of the time because it's easy, but it's something that I probably don't have to do. I'm pretty good at eyeballing things at this point. Like, I do the negative weight measure, and 9 times out of 10, when I pour it out, it's about what I thought it was going to be because I've been doing it long enough. So, but that just means, rather than like telling yourself, okay, the label says to have 30 grams of something, and putting the plate on the scale and then zeroing it out and then waiting until it says 30 grams. That's not a natural way to weigh your food out. Like, that's not what your brain is thinking, right? You're like, I want to have dressing to coat my vegetables or whatever it is. It's natural for you to want to pour an amount that looks good to you and is going to make that taste good to you, and then see how much you typically like to use. That's a better method. So I typically will put the bottle or the food or the ingredient on the scale, zero it out, put it on there, put it back on there. Now, if you're like, whoa, I'm getting a little happy with the peanut butter, now you know that that's something that you have to maybe portion control a little bit better, being a little bit more mindful of it. Okay. So I like using the negative weight measure. Another thing that I think people overthink with weighing your food is the raw versus cooked thing. What I will tell you is this: whatever way you are going to consistently be cooking that thing and weighing that thing and tracking that thing is what you're going to do. Don't overthink it. Yes, it is more accurate if you are weighing something in the raw form and you're cooking it, and then you're putting that cooked amount on your plate. But for some people, maybe you're batch cooking chicken on a Sunday and you're like, well, I can weigh it raw, but then how much am I going to have cooked? It's going to weigh differently when it's cooked. So how much that's so much, right? Like, so instead, just weigh it however you're going to log it, right? Just make it simple for yourself. I do have a system that works for me, but I'm trying to simplify things for you guys. And I think my system is probably more complicated than a lot of people would use. So I just think, rule of thumb, weigh it however you are going to log it, and log it however it weighs. But the one thing I will say is this: if you are weighing it cooked, log it as a cooked entry, and always do it that way. If you're weighing it raw, log it as a raw entry. Okay. Just don't overthink it. Things like pastas, all that stuff. And I have a guide that, if you guys want a guide for this, it's pretty easy, but for the most part, something that was raw, pastas and rice, they typically are double in weight when they're cooked. So they absorb water. And proteins, things that dehydrate, are typically about 70 to 75% of their weight when they're cooked. So like 4 ounces of raw is 3 ounces of cooked. Right now, I'm probably making you, this is too much for me to think about. So going back to what I said, keep it simple. However you are going to weigh it, that's how you're going to log it. Okay, simple. Just make it easy for yourself. All right. Other things to consider is like mixed dishes. Sorry. Thirsty today. Is if you're doing weight mixed dishes, you're going to want to create recipes. That just makes it easy for you. Once you've done it once, you won't have to keep repeating it, right? So like if you're doing like a big stir fry, having that paper nearby, writing down all the ingredients, going ahead and throwing it into the pan, getting it all cooked up. And then when it's done, you can go ahead and log a recipe. Again, I have guides for this, and we'll walk you guys all through this if you're in the jumpstart on how to do this. It makes it super easy. The other thing you can do is, if you don't want to create a recipe because maybe you're like, I don't even have time for that. Another tip that I give my clients is just taking 2 minutes and finding a store-bought entry of something similar, So it might be, maybe you're making shepherd's pie. Find a frozen entree of shepherd's pie and log your shepherd's pie based on that. If you use a more macro-friendly version, most of them do have the macros on there. Just estimate when you're dividing it. Like I had about, if it says it makes 8 servings, estimate it. You can also find a lot of people that do recipes now have made it a lot easier for you guys to log things by weight because they have it already in the apps by weight. But just something quick for you guys that do recipes. I'm going to be honest though, in the beginning, keep it simple, because really when we're talking about going back to the basics, your meals should really be components. It shouldn't be these crazy, 20 ingredient. Nobody has time for that. If you got time for 20 ingredient meals, you definitely have time to track your meals. So like that's really looking at that. And then the final thing I'm going to give you guys is paying attention when you're weighing your food out, because I'm kind of getting into this, is paying attention to those portions and what they look like on your plate. And also paying attention to the consistent amounts, right? You kind of get an idea for, okay, when I'm having oats for breakfast, in order for me to get closer to my needs for the day, I have to have 40 to 50 grams. This way, when you're logging, you're not trying to figure it out every single time. You already know it's kind of like a routine amount for you. Let's talk about making logging simpler. All right. So already talked about number 1, making sure that you're weighing, writing it down if you need to, but let's make it simpler to log. All right. One of the things that I like using is the copy and paste method. So in macros first, oftentimes I will copy from the day before. Even if I'm changing my meals, there are a lot of things I have on a routine basis, right? I have a little supplement section. A couple of my snacks might be the same, like pre-post workout. It just makes it easier for me to just go ahead and copy the things that I know I'm going to have consistent the next day. And then I can always adjust I can delete things and move things around or change amounts, but it's a lot easier that way. So once you start to build your meals, because your meals should be repeatable, that's an easy way to save you guys some time. All right. Pre-logging your food whenever it's possible is going to be helpful. We're not pre-logging by macros. We're just pre-logging a plan. This is I call it the skeleton plan, so that you have an idea. Okay, here's breakfast, lunch, dinner, and my post-workout snack. Now you can take a look at how much you've got planned out for the day, and you can fill the gaps in, right? That also gives you some flexibility, because you're like, oh, okay, maybe I'll decide if I want to have dessert or if I want to have the yogurt bowl before dinner or before bed. You can play around with things based on what you've already pre-logged. And then the second thing, like I mentioned earlier, is just to not try and log while you're cooking, but log as you go. So making sure that maybe when you sit down and you're eating, open your phone and take the 2 seconds to go ahead and, rather than scrolling through social media, log your meal. Log your meal, maybe log your next meal if you know you're going to be busy. And then don't be afraid to use estimations when necessary. So if you do tend to cook like a big dinner for your family, maybe you guys are making like spaghetti and meatballs, and you estimate, okay, I had about, 3 ounces of beef in that bolognese, about half a cup of marinara sauce, and I weighed out the pasta, and it was 6 ounces of cooked pasta. You can eyeball things occasionally. You don't have to always have your food scale. That's the beauty of using a food scale, because you start to get better about that. It's not about being perfect. Or maybe you go out to eat, or maybe you go to a friend's house for a meal. You're not going to pack your food scale with you and pull it out of the table and start weighing things, right? It's okay to eyeball things. Eyeball based on components, though. Even if let's just, going back to the shepherd's pie, you can totally eyeball that by portions, right? You can be like, that's about 3/4 of a cup of mashed potatoes. Finding some store-bought entry, mashed potatoes, logging that. There's about 3 ounces of ground beef. There was about 1/4 cup of peas and carrots, like whatever is in that recipe. And maybe there was some gravy in there. So you log a 1/4 cup of gravy. Maybe you log a tablespoon of oil. You're thinking in terms of ingredients and not overthinking the overall meal. It just makes it easy for you. All right. Again, nothing in here has talked about macros just yet, because this is where people get so stressed. They focus on the numbers, and the numbers are really not what matters as much. We're just looking at getting an accurate strategy for tracking our food that doesn't create obsession. Okay. And then a big one, eating out. Okay. Eating out is a part of life. All right. Restaurants are, anything from a restaurant is going to be higher in calories because there's going to be a lot more fats. There's going to be fats from oils, butters, sauces, sugar, things that you don't see on the actual plate that just add flavor. All right. So you're going to need to expect there's going to be variation in your foods. You're not going to be 100% accurate, but this is where we talk about going back into the habits. How are you eating when you're eating out, especially if you have specific goals? There are times when it's like we're just eating freely, right? We're like in maintenance and we're not thinking about things. It's okay to kind of like grabbing a handful of this and that because like, you know what, you can eyeball and be like, I don't think I overdid it, right? But when you have fat loss goals, you will very easily take yourself out of a calorie deficit by not paying attention to what you're consuming on your plate. And it's where going into that plate method can be helpful when you're eating out. All right. So like, you know, choosing it. The other thing I think about when I'm eating out is if I do want to have maybe like an appetizer and a meal, I think about, okay, my appetizer might be my afternoon snack. So maybe I'm going to skip the afternoon snack because I'm going to have that with my meal. I kind of play around with the plate method there too. But when you're eating out, you're not going to be perfect on things. Most people overthink this and they just don't track anything. And that doesn't teach you anything. It's important to get an idea for how many calories you're consuming when you're going out. In fact, one of my clients last weekend, she went to some restaurant. I forget what it was called, but it was like a very, it had some amazing food, but it was like, I think it was like an Afghan food. I don't even remember what it was called. It was not something that I was familiar with. And I pulled up the recipe or the menu, and she's going through all of the little things she had. She's like, I had a pumpkin dumpling. I had a half of a potato turnover. I had a half of a burger. I had a few pieces of steak. I had a half of a flatbread. I had a little bit of cheesecake. She had like 6 or 7 different things. And when I started counting everything up, it was almost 1,500 calories. And I said, I'm estimating 12 to 1,500 calories here. But if she had kind of had an idea of that stuff, it's good for her to see, because now she's like, okay, now I see overall where my calories are at for the course of 7 to 10 days, including that day. All right. Because that's where people can be like, I'm doing all this work and I'm not getting any results. We want to be able to see that stuff. And then we're just estimating things, but reminding yourself, it's not about, oh, I should feel bad about overeating. It's let me just see the data so I know what the expectations are, and just getting back to normalcy afterwards. A lot of people stress about going over on numbers. And that's where I really want to kind of emphasize here is I haven't really even talked about numbers yet, because that's where people get stressed out. None of this stuff will stress you out. It's the expectations of, am I going to hit my numbers? That's going to stress you out. Am I going to be over? Am I going to be under? That's what stresses you out. Am I perfect? Did I do it right? That's what stresses you out. Those are the things that stress you out. Along with, if you're somebody who doesn't have any structure to your meals and you're snacking a lot throughout the day, that does require a lot more mental energy to every time trying to be reminding yourself of that. But that's not a obsessed with macros problem. That's a you are eating too many times throughout the day problem, because grazing is not a natural way to be eating. It's not I don't want to call it not a healthy way to be eating, but that is a recipe for overeating, right? You're always giving your body feedback that every time you get a signal of like, I want to eat something, you're eating something. And we're not always hungry physically that many times a day. It's become a habit. So sticking to structured meals is going to help you a little bit with that. I'm not saying to ignore your hunger. I'm just saying that looking at those habits, that might actually be a sign that maybe your meals and your snacks aren't big enough. That's a common issue. A lot of times when people are not making it to their next meal or snack, it's because their previous one wasn't big enough. Just by increasing more food, the food noise between the meals goes down. Okay. So here's a couple of things I want to leave you guys with on this before I transition to the jumpstart. The most important things you guys can do to make keeping track of your food simple is stick to anchor meals. Okay. We should all have anchor meals. We all have anchor meals. Whether you're tracking your food or not, you have meals that you rely on right now. It's just, are those meals built to get you where you want to be or keep you where you're at? Okay. So tracking the data helps you see that, helps you make adjustments to those meals. You don't have to change everything all day. Next one is you need to know your numbers, but this should not be about playing macro Tetris. I give my clients pretty big ranges and a really a calorie ceiling and a minimum. I want them to have a minimum amount and a maximum amount and know that they're going to fall somewhere between that. They don't play macro Tetris, so if a client's at 75 fat and 185 carbs, but their goal was 60 fat and 240 carbs, not a big deal. I'm not upset about it. I look at their meals. I look at the structure of their meals. I look at maybe they maybe had a night out that night and they went a little bit over their fat because they went out to eat. I look at that stuff. That's how progress is made. It's not about being perfect on numbers. I think that the perfection on numbers is what burns most people out. We also want to be tracking data, not just from a daily basis, but looking at the big picture too. How is all of this stuff, impacting my weight and my energy levels? How am I feeling? So for instance, here's a great example is if you are tracking your food Monday through Thursday or Monday through Friday, and you're eating 1,600 calories, but like it's Saturday afternoon and like you cannot stop thinking about food, that might be a sign that maybe you're not eating enough throughout the week and you're busy. So you're stressed. So your hormones are kind of like not sparking your appetite because they're suppressing your appetite a little bit. And on the weekend, when you're more relaxed, you're like, man, I want to eat a little bit more. So sometimes by eating a little bit more throughout the week, your inclination to eat too much on the weekend goes down. Those are all things that I look at in my program. So really the main thing here is that I think that most people, when they talk about getting stressed about obsessing over macros, maybe you feel overwhelmed by starting it. It's because you're focusing so much on the numbers and not the system. The numbers don't matter as much as the system, because at the end of the day, tracking the food should be an afterthought. It should not be that hard. It should become just something that you do. It doesn't even really take up that much mental energy. I will say this, and this is funny. I had a conversation with my business mentor because I am a very data-driven individual. I look at like my Whoop band. I look at my calories. I don't really look at my calories, but I do track my food. I weigh myself. I track metrics in business. And he had mentioned to me adding another tracking sheet. I'm like, you know what, dude? I don't think you know what it feels like to be tracking so many things. And I can understand that aspect of things for you guys, that maybe you have a lot of things that you're keeping track of, right? You're keeping track of your kids' schedule, your kids' or your business meetings, you're keeping track of your business finance, your personal finances, like all of this different stuff. It can feel like one more thing. And that's why I think that just like any other thing that you track, it's making it just become part of your system. So that's truly what it is. So I'm not sure if any of you guys on here that are watching have any issues with tracking your food or anything like that, because I do want to help simplify that for you, especially if you guys have goals to lose body fat, improve performance, because that is people that are getting results, they're tracking. Whether they tell you they're tracking or not, whether they're actually using an app or not, they're tracking, they know. And the ones that aren't tracking spent a long time tracking their food or a long time tracking in some way to ensure that they're going to get results. So if you guys have specifics on this, let me know. But I am going to talk a little bit about my Jumpstart. I have some people on here still live. Would love to give you guys a little bit of information on the Jumpstart, because it is going to be starting on February 9th. And I'm just going to pull up my quick sheet here because I didn't add this to my notes that I had for today, but I do want to make sure I cover everything for you guys. And I'm not super good about remembering everything. Okay, so I am hosting a Jumpstart. Now, this Jumpstart is for everyone, but it is also for a specific person that I want to speak to. If you're somebody who has really been struggling to figure out how to lose body fat without so I get a lot of CrossFit women, right? We all have, I talked about this at the beginning, we all have performance goals, whether you are looking to compete or you just want to feel good about your scores on the leaderboard, right? You just want to get fitter in the gym. You want to feel good. You want to look good. But you want to feel good in the process, right? You don't want to feel like crap. Maybe you have tracked in the past. Maybe you have not tracked in the past. You need a strategy. You need a strategy to help you learn how to eat, to fuel your body, to get the results that you want from a body composition standpoint. You are not looking specifically for a number on the scale. You might have a number on the scale in mind, but it's more so I want to look and feel good, right? So that's the main goal. You're training hard. By the way, when I say training hard, I'm not saying that you are a freaking badass athlete. Like, I don't want you to hear, oh my God, I'm like a competitor. No, anybody that's showing up to the gym 4 to 6 days a week and you are pushing yourself in the gym, you're training hard. Maybe you are finding yourself low energy. Maybe you have like a poor recovery. Maybe your performance isn't going the way you wanted to. Okay. Maybe you're listening to this episode and you're like, I can't even think about tracking my food because I'm so burned out. I am so burned out from it, or it felt overwhelming and you never started it. Maybe you're somebody that is like eating clean. You're like, I'm eating so clean and my body's not changing. I get this all the time. Okay. I think the bottom line is you're working hard and you want your body to reflect your hard work. You know you're fit, you want to look fit, right? Or maybe you feel like you could be fitter, but you're not fueling yourself the right way, right? And I think a big one here is, this is common with me, and I know this is like, maybe you're somebody who what worked before isn't working now. And maybe that was macros. Maybe like, I did the macro thing and it worked for me once. I don't just teach macros. This is not a macro plan. Okay. I'm not dumbing myself down to macros. Macronutrients are a part of your nutrition, not the whole story. Your body is not responding because your body is not a math project. We need to make sure that you are getting enough nutrients for recovery, that your meals are built to energize you, that you're getting enough throughout the day. And you want a plan that's going to fit your life. All right. So I get this a lot. Man, it was so easy when I had no kids, when I was just me taking care of myself. Like, how could I be so disciplined? You had so much more mental bandwidth, right? That's why I put this episode out, because I want you guys to simplify things. All right. So this is going to make it a lot easier for you. I want to simplify what you're doing. This needs to fit the plan, because guess what? For a lot of people, you can go through a short challenge or series or whatever it is, but can you stay consistent with the habits that you've built to maintain? My goal is that you guys live lean, not just lose fat. All right. So here's what you're going to get in this jumpstart, so you have an idea of what to expect. We do have weekly calls. We're going to have a kickoff call on February 5th. The program doesn't start until the 9th, but I'm going to be doing the kickoff call before that. So you guys will have action steps. You'll be ready to go. You'll be able to take the weekend, do whatever you got to do to get yourself mentally, physically ready, which really you don't need much. You are going to get access to my framework. So I'm going to go over everything on how to approach meal building, meal timing, tracking your progress, making adjustments, just making sure that you have everything built out for you, along with calories and macronutrient ranges built for you. Okay. So this is where we're going to get some personalization in place. Everybody's getting an assessment. We're going to make sure that you have the right balance of nutrients for you. This way, you know where your ranges should be. And we're going to also talk to you about adjusting those things. We will make sure that you know what meal structure should look like, how many times a day you should be eating based on your training, based on your lifestyle, what times of day is best for you to be eating to feel your best. A lot of you guys have busy schedules. Some of my clients don't eat lunch. Why? Because I don't want them eating lunch when they're freaking stressed. So they have 2 snacks and they have a bigger breakfast and a bigger dinner. Like, there are strategies that we put in place based on the individual. Okay. So understanding how to adjust things, how to transition, so that making sure that maintaining feels good. Some things that you guys are going to get, as I mentioned, you are going to have weekly group calls. The group calls are going to be Q&A along with a focus for that week. Plus we're going to be troubleshooting some things that might be happening real time, whether it's like, man, I had a great start, but like the weekend came, we're going to talk about all that stuff that typically comes up. Professional nutrition support. So we're not guessing about things. If I do suspect that there might be something going on metabolically, hormonally, I will reach out to you one-on-one and give you my feedback. We do address things from that perspective. This is not just, age, height, weight, here's your macros. We do look at everything in our assessments. And then you're going to have plenty of access to plenty of implementation guides and resources to make sure that we're making it easy for you, whether it's some ideas for easy recipes, meal prep, food lists, all that stuff to make it super easy for you to apply in your life. So this does start, again, it starts on February 9th. Kickoff call is February 5th. Registration is right now open. I am leaving it at $47 until the end of the week. At the end of the week, it goes up to $97. So if anybody wants to sign up for it now, it runs from February 9th through March 1st. It is a great way to kick things off for you guys, get yourself started off in the right way with a sustainable plan. one thing that I'm going to say here, this is not a how much weight can we lose in 21 days. This is not a fat loss challenge. This is not that kind of a challenge. This is meant to be a jumpstart. It is truly meant for people who are looking to make a starting change that they can sustain long-term. That's who this is for. If you guys want in on this, just shoot me a message. You can comment jumpstart in my DMs or comment below jumpstart. That will give me the cue. I will send you over the link. I also put it in my bio on Instagram. I don't know how to do that on Facebook. I'm not honestly very active on Facebook. I need to get better about that. But if you guys have any questions about the jumpstart, please feel free to let me know. Jillian, I will make sure I send that over to you now. If you guys if anybody else has any questions about things, shoot me over a message. I am looking forward to getting it started. And I am going to sign off and get back to work. Although this is work. I just love my job. I love what I do. I could not be more grateful for everything that I get to do and all the people that I get to help. And I really do love these jumpstarts, guys. They're so much fun for me. It's like starting school. It feels like I'm starting kindergartners. It's awesome. And whether it's women that have been doing things for a long time or they're just getting started, it's just truly awesome to be able to connect with different people and have a good time with it. So Jillian, I will send you a message now. If anybody else has any questions, feel free to pop them over my way. And I'm signing off. Bye, guys.